Welcome back to the Health Longevity Secrets Show with your host, Dr. Robert Lufkin. His book, Lies I Taught in Medical School, is now a New York Times bestseller. And now, please enjoy this week's episode as we explore the latest advances in rapamycin for longevity with Krister Kauppi.
Rapamycin has been one of the most popular topics on this podcast, and today we're going to dive in again. Can rapamycin be the key to unlocking a longer, healthier life is a question we ask. Join us as Krister Kauppi, a dedicated health and longevity enthusiast, shares his captivating journey from personal health scare to discovering the potential of rapamycin as an alternative to intermittent fasting. We delve into the science behind this intriguing compound, focusing on how it inhibits mTOR and activates catabolic processes, potentially slowing down aging and at the same time reducing the incidence of age-related diseases. Together, we explore the delicate balance between anabolic and catabolic processes in our bodies and the significant roles that insulin, insulin-like growth factor, and testosterone play in these pathways. Krister also opens up about his personal experiences with rapamycin, highlighting the crucial importance of personalized doses and the remarkable benefits he observed, such as improved dental health and reduced inflammation. We discuss the exciting concept of longevity cocktails, combinations of fasting, rapamycin, and other lifestyle interventions aimed at extending lifespan. Learn about the innovative work being done at the Rapamycin Longevity Lab and their mission to create advanced longevity solutions, leveraging cutting-edge technology like Biomedical's WormBot. This episode is a compelling invitation to join us on a groundbreaking journey towards enhancing human longevity. This episode is sponsored by Cyfox Health. One of the most common questions I get asked is which blood tests I check myself on a regular basis. Well, I check 17 biomarkers, but the secret is I'm able to do everything from the convenience of my home. I collect a sample with just a simple finger stick like this. You don't need to be a doctor to do it. Then I just mail it in and wait for the results. Cyfox Health makes it possible. Use the link below to get 15% off. This episode is brought to you by L-Nutra, maker of the Prolong fasting mimicking diet. If you'd like to try it, use the link in the show notes for 20% off. Osteoporosis is a silent killer, causing 1 in 2 women and 1 in 4 men over age 50 to break a bone, and these fractures can be fatal. Now, the usual way to detect osteoporosis is with something called a DEXA scan, which requires radiation. But if you've already had a CT scan, we can now use that data to test for osteoporosis without the radiation of a DEXA. Check the show notes to find out how and save $50 off. And now, please enjoy this week's episode. Hey, Krister, welcome to the program.
Big thanks, Robert, and glad to be here.
Well, I can't wait to talk about your fascinating interests in rapamycin and your great project, the Rapamycin Longevity Lab. But before we do that, maybe just let's get our audience up to speed. What is rapamycin and how did you get interested in it? Why is it so interesting?
Yeah, that's a really great question. If I go a little bit back in time here, because I have had quite long time health interest in my life, and I think it was around 12 years ago that I stepped on the scale, and the weight was 84 kilos. And I got really shocked when I saw what the scale told me. So that was the kickstart of my health journey. And I started to look at things that could help me get things back on track again and stop this bad trend in my life. And One thing that I found as a possible solution was intermittent fasting. So I started to read quite much about the topic and decided to try it out. And it worked much better than I expected. And one good thing also with that was that it freed up 1 hour every day in my life, which I decided also to invest in exercise. So that way I got a quite good combo of fasting and exercise and weight loss. And after a while, I felt that my well-being went up quite much, both physically and mentally. So after a while, I felt that I haven't felt this good in my life before. So I must be doing something right here. So I started to read even more about fasting and things like that, and wrote 2 books about fasting. One about short-term fasting, intermittent fasting, and one about extended fasting for several days. And when I was writing those books, I came across different alternatives to fasting. And there were different compounds like metformin, which was a very interesting compound and had quite promising data on it. And then I came also across rapamycin. And when I started to read more about rapamycin, my interest just grew and grew. And I started to talk to people who was using rapamycin, and I talked to researchers who researched around it. And after a while, I felt that I need to also try this compound because it's very aligned with my life goals of living a long and well life. And that decision I took around 1 year ago in January. And that is also something I have shared in my social media channels, my journey week by week, both the good and not so good sides of taking rapamycin, mostly good ones. But we can talk about a little bit more about that later on in this podcast.
Yeah, so you became interested in rapamycin after studying fasting and doing fasting and exercise. So what is it about rapamycin that interested you, or how does it work? What is rapamycin's appeal?
Very good question, Robert. And if I look a little bit on the view of aging that I have, it has quite similarities with Michael Blagosklony's aging theory, that mTOR is a key driver of age-related diseases. And I think also you have quite similar thoughts around the topic. But one thing that I like to talk about instead of just mTOR, it's about using another word, which is anabolic processes, because mTOR is only one anabolic process. And by that, we can say that the key driver of age-related diseases are anabolic processes. And by inhibiting the anabolic processes and activating something opposite to anabolic processes, which is catabolic processes, we can hopefully in humans slow down the aging rate of the development of age-related diseases. So that is a super interesting thing that I think rapamycin targets in different ways. And one thing that I think also you have touched in different ways is that it's easy to see that mTOR is something bad and that you should avoid it totally. But mTOR has its good sides. The problem gets when the mTOR or the anabolic processes gets too high or are activated in the wrong situations. And the same thing can be said about the catabolic processes. If you express the catabolic processes too much, then you can start to get very strange diseases because of that, which we can see, for example, at the people who have anorexia or something like that. They can get strange heart failure and things like that, which is not age-related disease. It's a more catabolic driven disease. So the thing here is to try to find some kind of good balance between anabolic processes and catabolic processes. Fasting, for example, activates the catabolic processes and inhibits the anabolic. The same thing with rapamycin. So there are many ways of targeting these different pathways. So that is a super interesting area.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, Krister. Just to maybe summarize this, so catabolic or catabolism is breaking down of cells, breaking down, repair, autophagy, and turning mTOR off with rapamycin activates some catabolic processes, as do intermittent fasting and other fasting things. And then conversely, anabolic processes are growth processes, sort of hyperfunction in Misha Blaglasconi's viewpoint, and turning mTOR on activates hyperfunction and anabolic processes. And what you say is that neither one is exclusively good or bad. We need both to be healthy. In particular, as a young organism, as we're growing up, we need anabolism, a growth to grow let our brains mature, let our long bones grow and everything. But as Dr. Blaglasconi has mentioned in his theory and others' theory of hyperfunction theory of aging, that if this growth is turned on as we get older, then we drive some of the diseases or most of the diseases of longevity. What are some of the other drivers you mentioned of anabolism? Certainly mTOR is one, but if we step back towards away from mTOR, other things would you, like insulin-like growth factor, testosterone.
Yeah, exactly. Testosterone is insulin, IGF-1, and the other things are like upstream pathways of mTOR. As I view it, they are part of the whole anabolic process, but they are interlinked with each other in different ways.
So as we get older, then your feeling is that what was useful in our youth, the growth, the anabolism, the anabolic processes are less useful and become harmful. So we want to turn those down as we get older. Is that right?
And that is a very interesting point, that it seems like we don't need so much anabolic processes when we get older. And that way, we probably need a little bit more of the catabolic processes to get the balance right. So the balance switches throughout the life, and it can also switch between different situations. Let's say that a person gets surgery or a wound or something like that, then that person needs anabolic processes to heal much faster. So even in a specific situation, that can fluctuate. And one other thing that I would like to point out from a personal perspective is that when I was doing, for example, OMAD, 1 meal a day, I did that for 1 year, and that was a little bit problematic for me. I know some people it works perfectly, but for me it was a little bit problematic because I didn't get sufficient amount of protein, and it made me skinny. So I think every day of OMAD in 1 year, that caused a 2 catabolic process. I activated too much of the catabolic processes. So the interesting thing here is to find some kind of measurements or how to navigate in this balance in a good way. And one good measurement, as I see it, is to look at, for example, muscle size and muscle performance. If that is decreasing, then probably we are in a 2 catabolic state, and we need to get a little bit more anabolic processes in place. But on the same time, you don't need to activate anabolic processes so much so that you get so big so you can compete in a bodybuilding event or something like that, because that I don't think is not aligned with longevity either. So we need to find ways to navigate in this, but currently we don't have the ways to find the optimal dose around this, but there are some things we can look at, I think.
Yeah, it's such a great point, that this balance between anabolic and catabolic processes of mTOR being on, mTOR being off, and other networks as well. It's so important to get the right balance, and the right balance may be different for each of us. And you mentioned looking at muscle mass as an indicator, but it's very hard to know if we're doing it right. I mean, muscle mass is certainly a great one. I guess we could look at hemoglobin A1C for insulin, and fasting insulin as another or anabolic factor. But there really aren't a lot of things we can look at. What other things are there that you recommend?
I think one other thing that can be interesting is blood pressure, because high blood pressure is probably connected to high anabolic processes, and low is more connected to catabolic processes. So that is also one interesting thing. You can probably also look at the cortisol levels. If they are very high, that can be an indication that you are in a 2 catabolic state. You stress the body too much. And energy levels can also be one indication if you have very low energy levels. But that is a little bit you can have low energy levels if you are like overweight or something like that, and have diabetes, and so it's hard to get all the measurements right. But if you have many different measurements and look at the whole picture, then you probably can get some hints if you're too catabolic or too anabolic.
Yeah, I love the fact that you are sort of a biohacker. You've taken an interest in yourself and your own body and your own experience with these, and you've shared them extensively on social media, which I love, and your podcast as well. Maybe you could share with our audience now your journey with taking rapamycin, what decisions you made, what tests you got along the way, what was it like, what do you have to worry about, what was your experience?
Yeah, it was, as I said, I started taking rapamycin in the end of January last year. And I had a conversation with a physician, and that is something all people should have who try to self-experiment with this type of compound, because it's a pharmaceutical drug and needs a prescription. And one thing that can be good to point out is that all people tolerate rapamycin differently. Some people can take quite high dose, and some cannot even take a low dose or a dose at all. And that is also one important thing, that you have a conversation with the physician, because that person can help you out in finding a dose that works for you. And if things are going in the wrong direction, they can also stop the treatment or do changes in the dose protocol or something like that. And also one other thing is that they can understand much better if rapamycin should not be combined with other types of drugs and things like that. So yeah, always use a physician around this. It's not something like going to the gym and doing it by yourself. But yeah, it started with that I dig quite a lot in the topic for around 1 year around rapamycin, because I wanted to understand the research, and I wanted to also understand the effects and the potential side effects profile, and what type of risk I was taking here. And I talked to different people who were taking rapamycin. I contacted them, and I also posted quite much on social media and discussion forums around my question. And after a while, I came to the conclusion, together with my physician, that yeah, we can try this out and see if it works. And because I'm quite sensitive as a person for example, sugar and alcohol and everything, I don't need much before I feel effect. So I didn't want to start with a target dose directly. So the way we decided that we should do this was to start with the lowest dose, 1 milligram once weekly, and then slowly, step by step, increase the dose to the target dose, which was 6 milligrams once weekly. And I think that was a good approach for me. But I know some people are jumping directly to the target dose without any problems. But for me, it was a good approach, and to also minimize the risk, because I didn't know how high dose I could take. And I got some interesting effects throughout the journey, but also some side effects. One of the common side effects around rapamycin is mouth sores. That was quite mild mouth sores. I got them 3 times during 1 year. And also some of my lipids went up slightly, but not so much. And that, I will say, is the side effects that I have noticed. So it was not so big things, and something that I feel that I can live with. If I get some mouth sore, that is not a huge deal. Regarding the beneficial effects that I have seen, the thing that I'm very impressed about is the dental health, because I have struggled quite long time with problems with bleeding gum, and I have had contact with many different dentists. They have tried to help me out without any success. And bleeding gum is not something good to have either, because it can lead to early Alzheimer's and other problems with age-related diseases. So I felt that this is something that I need to find a solution for. But when I started taking it, I didn't know that it will have an impact on the dental health. So when I saw that the bleeding was gone and I have not felt any problems with my dental health now, and also when I go to my dental hygienist, she says that my teeth are really good now. So there has been really impressive improvement there. And I know also a researcher called Jonathan N, who is going to do a clinical trial this year around this in humans. And there exist also some animal studies in mice, which shows quite interesting results also. So yeah, that's a huge, great benefit I have felt. One other thing is that I have had problems in my shoulder, some kind of inflammation or something like that. And when I take the rapamycin, the inflammation goes down. And it feels like my shoulder is also getting better step by step. So that is also from a health span and quality of life perspective, one thing that has been a great effect. A third thing is that I have not got sick, have any sick days during this year. That has been one concern that is usually raised around rapamycin, because rapamycin is FDA approved for organ transplant patients. It's seen as an immune suppressor. But the thing with that is that the immune suppression effect is more seen in higher and daily doses, and not in intermittent doses such as weekly or every other week doses, and much lower doses. So that is also interesting thing that my wife, for example, she almost never gets sick. And during this year, she got 2 quite severe common colds. And she's not on rapamycin. So she is like the control group for me. And yeah, she got the common cold, but I didn't get it. My daughter also got the common cold, but I didn't get any. So that is a very interesting part also on that. So yeah, those are probably the top 3 ones.
Yeah, so for the just to review, the longevity dose of rapamycin for people who take it off label for longevity is, for most people, it's once a week, right?
Yes.
Because we want to avoid the daily organ immune suppression effects, which daily dose for renal transplant and other transplants that you mentioned.
And the researcher, rapamycin researcher, Matt Cable, and he did a quite big survey around people who are taking rapamycin, and the common dose regimen was 6 milligrams once weekly. And if we look, for example, at the females, they take a little bit less, and the males can take a little bit more. And it can also depend on body weight and things like that. So, and also age. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the dosage regimen goes back to Misha Blaglasconi and Alan Green, who referenced Joan Manick's paper on the Rapalog that she did in a trial of humans, but it was on a weekly dose, but it was immune enhancement, and it was, I think they were one of the optimal doses was around that. But
yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned before that you were doing intermittent fasting and longer fasting, and I have colleagues, who I say, who are fasting, and I say, well, rapamycin has a lot of the same effects. They go, well, great, I don't have to fast anymore. I'll just take a pill. Is that a good approach in your mind? Do you still fast? Do you have to worry about is rapamycin the cure for everything, or does lifestyle still play a role?
That's a good point that you lift up there. As I view it, is that the thing everyone should try to focus on is to get basic lifestyle interventions on place. And what is the basic lifestyle intervention? As I view it, it's exercise, it's sleep, it's stress management, it's diet, and the fifth one is fasting. So as I view it, it's important to get those in place. And after that, you can add another layer on top of that with other interventions, everything from like sauna to rapamycin and other things, but never discard basic lifestyle interventions. One other interesting thing around if we compare, for example, fasting and rapamycin, I think it was John Manick, the researcher who did the research around improved immune system. She found that fasting didn't work as well later in life as it did earlier in life. But mTOR inhibitors works later in life also, and also in early in life. But the thing with mTOR inhibitors is that there is a protein which is called AMPK, which is one part of the catabolic processes. And rapamycin is good at inhibiting mTOR, but it's not so good at activating AMPK. But the calorie restriction and fasting is better at activating AMPK. And there exists also research around that combining, for example, rapamycin and calorie restriction and things like that can have interesting combinational effects. But of course, we need more research on this, but it shows that it's not so easy to just pick one.
Yeah, certainly like the unexpected synergies in the ITP, the interventions testing program about rapamycin and acarbose together, and a huge effect. And well, speaking of research, let's talk about, you're the founder of the Rapamycin Longevity Lab. Can you talk about that a little bit and what it is, how people can get involved with it?
Yeah. The Rapamycin Longevity Lab is one initiative that I started, and the goal with the lab is to take mTOR inhibitors such as rapamycin to the next level. And the way we are going to do this is by combining, for example, rapamycin with other longevity interventions in different longevity cocktails. And by that, we hope that we can engineer powerful longevity cocktails which will increase the lifespan effect in different ways. And one longevity cocktail is the one you mentioned, Robert, about rapamycin and acarbose, which showed very impressive results in the ITP, the intervention testing program in mice. But that is a quite simple cocktail, but currently that is the best cocktail that we have. The lab is going to engineer much more advanced cocktails. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to start developing these cocktails in worms with the help of a technology which is developed by a company called Biomedical. They have a worm boot which makes it possible for us to, in a high efficient and cost effective way, develop these cocktails. And when we have some of these cocktails, then we are going to test them in mice. And after that, we are going to test them in clinical trials and hopefully get some approved for human use. So that is our goal.
Yeah, it's so exciting. This WormBot technology that you're going to be using through Aura it deploys at scale, testing using artificial intelligence. But the bottom line is that it's very cost effective. It's very high throughput. So it's one thing to talk about, coming up with a cocktail and testing all these things, which could take decades or, years to decades. But with what you're doing, this is possible in a very short time frame. I think, someone was, Matt Caberline was talking about doing 1 million molecules. That's their goal, testing 1 million different things in 5 years or something. But it shows you the power of the technology. So can people, in addition to following you and seeing the work you're doing with the work on the Rapamycin Longevity Lab, can they also participate and help fund different things? Maybe how would they do that, or how can they find out more about that?
Yeah, they can visit the homepage masteronething.com, and on that page we describe the first project that we will start soon, and you can join the list of helping out in moving the field forward in different ways. It can be like helping out with funding, helping out with contacts or research or anything else. So as we view it in the lab, is that together we can do so much more than some few people. And yeah, let's do this journey together.
Yeah. So if, for example, a company is developing a new product and they want to test it, to be part of this cocktail with or without rapamycin, they could contact you and then find out how they could do that as well then, right?
Yeah.
To do that, because there's this whole field is moving so fast and so many things are happening. It's every week there's new breakthroughs, and this has been so much fun. I think we need to come back and do another podcast, because we have so much more stuff to talk about that we didn't get to today. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And Krister, it was great to chat with you, and thank you for coming to us all the way from Sweden. What time is it there now?
It's soon 5 o'clock here in the evening here. So yeah.
Okay, so it works well. Well, thanks again so much for all you're doing. I think we're all going to be following your work on social media and with the Rapamycin Longevity Project. But thanks for spending time with us, and thanks for everything.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and keep up the great work.
If you are enjoying this program, please hit that subscribe button, or even better, leave a review. Your support makes it possible for us to create the quality programming that we're continually striving for.
Can I start? Is it recording?
It's already recording.
Oh, sorry. This is for general information and educational purposes only, and it's not intended to constitute or substitute for medical advice or counseling, the practice of medicine, or the provision of healthcare, diagnosis, or treatment, or the creation of a physician-patient or clinical relationship. The use of this information is at their own user's risk. If you find this to be on the value, please hit that like button to subscribe to support the work that we do on this channel. And we take your suggestions and advice very seriously, so please let us know what you'd like to see on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time. You should say that.
No, that's good. It's for you to say that. That's pretty good. Do you like it? You want to do it one more time, or is that good? I think that was good.
Yes.
All right.
You need to save the recording.
All right.